Hello everyone, it's your good buddy Spider back again on time with this episode. I'm feeling well rested. My cough is almost gone. Almost. And in general, things are just looking up from where they were last week. It is nearly Halloween in a couple of days here. Tomorrow, it will be my daughter's birthday. She'll be 11. So we'll be celebrating that. And I'm doing alright. I'm doing better than I had been doing. I have had a few setbacks, though. I will say that. I've had a few setbacks. One of which is that the kittens, because they're teething, as kittens are wont to do, as any young animal like humans tend to do, they are chewing on anything that they can find, and this includes electrical cords. Let me preface this with the fact they aren't hurt or damaged or anything. The kittens, they're okay. They're perfectly healthy. They even went to the vet today for their standard appointment, and they're fine. But they have been trying to chew on wires and cords because it's almost impossible to really keep everything from the entertainment center away from them. But they haven't chewed through any of that. What they chewed through was the cord to my Razer gaming headset that I've had for a few years now. It was giving me some trouble with the volume box because all of modern headsets like this have a little box with like a volume slider on it, and mine always tend to go bad. I've had them multiples over the years, and they always seem to go bad. It was giving me some trouble, but the headset was still good, had great sound, and the kittens chewed through. They got up onto the table where it was while I was sleeping, and they chewed through the cable completely. So now it's a wireless headset. But it's not meant to be wireless, so it doesn't work. And potentially I could fix it if I had the time, and if I had the wire. And I don't have either one of those right now. So maybe I'll keep it around maybe and see if I can fix it at some point. But it's So I'm a little bit grumpy with them. But it's an evolving situation here. So how are you? How's everybody doing? I know last week's episode was a little short and it was late. I was still dealing with a lot of stuff, but I'm feeling much better now than I did. But don't call it a comeback. That's the name of the episode. Don't call it a comeback, because I just bounced back a little bit. And I have a couple of things that I want to talk about in regards to calling it, don't call it a comeback, because I have like an interesting topic. But before I get into that, I do want to address something. And this is... I've got this... It's been a weird day. And I want to make sure that what I'm going to say, because I have listeners who are connected with the situation. I have some listeners who are more directly connected to it than I am, and probably have more of a right to discuss it and talk about it than I do. But because I'm kind of on the periphery, I wanted to talk about it, and I want to be respectful, because I don't want this to come off as me hating on somebody who can no longer defend themselves, right? I don't want to come off as I'm deliberately being insulting. It's a weird kind of dichotomy, which is a big word, I suppose, kind of pretentious. It's a weird yin-yang kind of situation I'm in with this. And so I want to be careful about it, not because I'm afraid of upsetting people, because I'm not going out of my way to upset people. I'm not trying to rile anybody up or to say anything that's that goes against what they believe, because again, they're more connected than I am. And that all sounds really vague, so let me get into it. Let me address this. Recently, someone connected through various circles of various friend groups that I've been a part of throughout the years from when I went to school. Somebody died. Okay? And maybe that'll tell you the seriousness of the situation and how I'm addressing it. I was not close with this person. And this was the last time I had any sort of interaction of any kind with them that I can remember was more than 20 years ago, if not longer than that, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if I've had any sort of interaction with them after I graduated high school. They were a year or two ahead of me, I believe. A year or two ahead of me in school. So they graduated before I did, but we're pretty close. We're in the same generation, very similar age range. And I don't know the circumstances behind what happened, so I'm not going to elaborate on that. I don't know the specifics, and it's probably not important for me to know, because again, it's been a long time. We weren't close. There's a lot of people on my friends lists on social media who knew this person better than I did, kept up with them throughout all that time, and thought the world of them. Right? They had all these positive stories, and they're real broken up, and they're real upset about it. And I don't want those people to feel upset by anything I'm going to say about it. It's just it's a weird situation for me, because when I knew them, they were an asshole. Okay? I didn't get along with them. We weren't enemies. We didn't, constantly attack each other and things like that. And when I say that they were an asshole at the time, in my estimation, I don't want that to be misconstrued as I still think they're an asshole, or that I think everyone else should feel that way. Why don't they feel that way, etc.? Why are they saying such good things about this person when obviously they were a terrible person? I'm not saying that. I know it sounds... Hear me out. Hear me out on this. I saw a side of this person at the time, again, this is a long time ago, that completely turned me off of them. And I didn't really give them a second thought past a certain point. And I didn't hate the person. I didn't hold a grudge. I didn't go out of my way to find out what they were doing later in life so I could be like, oh, look what this person's up to. They've got everybody fooled. Because that's not how I felt about it. I really didn't think much of it. So, when someone asked me about, hey, have you heard about so-and-so? And I said, no. We didn't really, interact much. What's going on? They said, oh, yeah, they passed away. I mean... I wondered if you know anything. And I said, oh, no, not really, but, I mean, I'll see what I can find out. And I have looked around just to see what people are saying, and there are a lot of people saying a lot of very good things about them. And I'm not going to invalidate that. I'm not going to say, well, these people clearly are wrong, because I remember this person as being completely awful. That's not fair if I were to have that opinion. And I don't think it's correct either. I can't say that I'm at all... And this is where I'm going to make myself sound kind of like an asshole, and I'll understand if you feel that way. But I don't have any strong opinions about them being gone. But I don't think... Because I'm removed from the situation, and I was clearly not a close friend, I don't think that matters. I think it matters more the people who knew them better than I did, who clearly had positive interactions throughout much of their life. It's just kind of a weird situation, Because when you have memories, when the last memories you have of a person are negative, and there's been so much time passed, and then something happens and they're gone, and everyone else that you know that you have been friends with or have had positive interactions with have had positive reactions about them, it's got to make me think. I mean, because then I have to wonder, have I been the bad guy all this time in thinking negative about this person? And it's entirely possible that I probably have been. It's entirely possible that I was always completely wrong about this person. But I can't really change my opinion of them because I did not interact with them over the past 20, 25 years. So, again, the last memory I have of anything interacting with them was profoundly negative. So it's a weird space to be in. And I hope that the people that we collectively knew, I hope they don't look down on me or are upset with me for not expressing my sympathies, because I don't really have them, other than an in general sense of, oh, well, a person passed away, that's too bad. And I don't say that flippantly. I mean, I don't like when people just pass away. You know, it's too bad when a person moves on. It's too bad in a real way, not, oh, that's too bad, whatever, move on. You know, it is too bad, because everybody can contribute in a lot of different ways, whether I enjoyed their presence or not, you know. I can't really feel strongly about it beyond that. But I hope everybody who's dealing with the loss, I hope they come through it and they find ways to, I suppose, honor the memory or something like that. And again, it sounds really dismissive, and I don't mean it to sound that way, and I'm trying not to. Again, I don't want to disrespect the person's memory. I don't think that's fair of me to do that. I just, again, the last memory I have of them is that they were an asshole. And so it's a weird space. It's a weird space for me to be in, to think about that while everyone else is grieving. Right? But again, I did not hate the person. I didn't hold a 25-year grudge. It was what it was. It was what it was, I guess. And that's where I'm at with that. And I think a lot of us kind of have situations like that, which is why I even brought it up. Because I debated whether I even wanted to discuss it at all, being kind of removed from the situation. But I think what I'm trying to talk about is we all kind of have that sort of feeling for some people in life. You don't hate them, you don't go out of your way to wish them misery or anything like that, because you're not trying to be a terrible person, and you don't think they were a terrible person. You just didn't get along. You didn't like them. Maybe they didn't like you. And then they're gone. And I don't think it's fair to gloat over anything either. Like, even if I really disliked a person, again, there's only one person I consider an enemy of in my life. We've talked about that before. And if I got the notification from somebody connected somewhere along the chain that, oh yeah, they passed, I'm just going to be like, well, that's too bad. I'm not going to be like, well, good, they deserved it. Because I don't think anybody really deserves it. Unless you've done some really heinous, awful things with your life. And even then I'm kind of forgiving on certain aspects. But, I don't like to wish an end on people. I don't like to wish that they'll pass away just because I don't like them. That's extreme to me. I know we all get those feelings that they're kind of like, "Arr," but it's just not me, right? And in this situation again, I'm so far removed from it. I can't honestly feel real sympathy about it, but I'm not going to be disrespectful and say that they deserved it or that I'm glad they're gone, because I don't feel those either. I just wanted to expand on where I was with all that. And I hope the people that are invested, like I said, can find some kind of closure and kind of feel good about the situation at some point in the future. So that's that. It's an uncomfortable topic, and I debated whether to say anything or not, but I did want to. I don't think anyone was really going to come asking for my opinion per se. But if they were like, hey, why didn't you post a whatever, and what do you think about this? That's why. And I don't believe I've been disrespectful in saying that. I think I've been clear and honest, and I'm not looking down on anybody who had a better relationship with this person than I did. But let's move on to something else. Now, I guess on the same topic. No, you know what? I'm not gonna give that person. I am gonna say one thing. I'm not gonna talk extensively about this because I don't want to give attention to the guy. This is not the same person that I was just talking about a minute ago. This is what was his name? Let me look it up to make sure I'm getting it correctly. This was in the news a week or so ago, maybe. Maybe longer, maybe not quite that long, but very recently. A guy by the name of Ian Watkins. He was the lead singer for a band called Lost Prophets, who I was a big fan of. And he did some absolutely horrendous, awful, terrible things involving infant children. Not just young children, infant children. I can't even describe them because it's just the worst. If you want to look them up, trigger warning for the people who need it. I hope you've got a strong stomach because it's some awful stuff. And he recently was killed in jail because he was spending, I think, a couple of decades in jail. Last I knew, for what he did, he'd been convicted, and he was killed by a fellow inmate. And that's where I have to kind of be like, well, I'm not going to glorify in somebody getting killed, but you know what? He did some pretty awful things. He did some pretty terrible, terrible things. And so not only do I not feel bad, but I think probably the world is better off. I'm not going to celebrate it, but I'm certainly not going to feel bad about it. And that's a different situation, though. I don't want to compare the two things. I don't want people to think I'm comparing what he did and his lifestyle choices to, the other person I was originally talking about, who I didn't name on purpose, because again, I'm not trying to slander somebody. I'm not trying to talk bad about somebody who's passed on. But Mr. Watkins is, he's gotten his what he deserved, I suppose, if you believe in that kind of thing. It's one of the very rare occurrences of not being able to separate the artist from the art. Because I listen to a lot of people who have done some things that are questionable. Not like heinous crimes, but people who said things that I don't agree with, or who've gotten in trouble for different things, and I've been like, well, man, that kind of sucks. They're kind of a shitty person, but I still like the music that they're making, and I think it's artistic, and I'm going to keep listening to it. Maybe I won't buy it anymore. Maybe I'll just, find ways to download it or whatever so they don't get paid off of it, but I still enjoy what they're making. Whereas with Lost Prophets, I to this day I can't. I won't. It's actually a muscle memory thing that prevents me from even trying. I used to listen to their music quite a lot, but when that news came out that he did what he did and that he got convicted of it, I found myself occasionally like, you know what, I still kind of like the music, maybe I'll listen to it today. I would reach out to my computer or to my music player or whatever to find the track, and I would hover there, and I wouldn't even have a conscious thought. But my hand would hover, and then I just wouldn't play it. There was just something in me that prevented me from doing it because it was such a horrible thing. I could not support it in any way. And I have not done so since. I have not listened to a piece of Lost Prophet's music since then. Because I cannot, in good conscience, separate the art from the artist in that context. I just can't. And I won't. So, yeah, weird headspace as far as everything goes today. You know, it's a strange spot to be. But let's lighten the mood a little bit. Let's lighten the mood a little bit more, because this started off a little bit depressing and a little uncomfortable. But let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about where the title of the episode comes from. It says, "Don't call it a comeback," and it's a creative way, I feel, of talking about something that's come up. I've referenced this a couple of times because we talked about movies a ways back, and I mentioned that there's a nostalgia going around for certain movies. Like they made a new Naked Gun movie, they made a new Cheech and Chong movie, and different things, right? But there's a lot of things happening where they're remaking or rebooting, or they're taking an old movie, which is not an uncommon thing. They've done this for decades now. They've done this for a long time, where they take an old movie and they make a new one. Same basic story, characters are the same. They got new updated actors, new sets, new graphics, whatever the new technology is, new director to try to reinterpret the story, right? I just saw that they've remade The Running Man, and it doesn't quite look the same. It looks kind of iffy, kind of like whatever. And there's a lot of that going on right now. There's Disney is particularly at fault for some of this. Disney has been making live action versions of its animated movies, which you could say, well, that's a different take, but you know, it's still basically the same story and it should be the same movie. But often it's not. They've made changes for what they call the modern audience. And I'm not going to get into everything's woke and blah, 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 because that's not, I don't care about any of that. That's not really the point I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to say that when they remake some of these movies, the new ones suck. Not because of any modern audience decisions or anything like that, but just because they suck. For example, a while ago I talked about, several episodes back, I talked about how they made a live-action version of Lilo and Stitch. And they changed the ending. And now the movie sucks. Because the whole point of the original ending was that everybody stayed together as a family. And in the new one, the family gets broken up. And that's supposed to be a good thing. You know, it undermines the whole point of the original story. And then you have the controversy with the Snow White live action. All the changes that they made. And that hasn't gone over well. Now, a lot of people conflate that with comments that the lead actress has said and whatnot. And I'm not going to get into that part of it. I'm looking at strictly at the artistic merit of the remake versus the original cartoon. And I'm not going to say that I'm hugely invested in Snow White as a movie. Like, the original movie wasn't, like, on the top 10 of my favorite cartoons of all time. It was just a movie. I wasn't, but if you're going to retell that, you should be as accurate as possible, and they weren't. They changed things again. Mulan, the live action, changed things to the effect where they changed the name of one of the most important characters from the cartoon. They removed the semi-romantic subplot, which is not a huge deal because you don't have to preserve some of that stuff all the time. But I don't know. They again changed things that didn't need to be changed. They weren't. It's a story about feudal China. Okay, there was a caste system in China at the time. All of this is historically accurate. But they changed some things in favor of telling a more modern story. And that if you're going to have a story about a historical place where historical things happened, you should stick close to the historical things, even if they're uncomfortable. Okay? If you're going to have a movie about the southern United States prior to the Civil War, then you do have to, unfortunately, address the issue of slavery, because it existed. It was a thing that happened. It's uncomfortable, and we're ashamed of it, but it happened. You don't have to glorify it. You don't have to make it look good. You can make it look crappy like it was, because it was crappy. It was awful. It was a shitty situation for a lot of people, and that's to put it mildly. That's to really undersell it, right? Some families are still dealing with the effects of that to this day, but uncomfortable history is still history, and we have to acknowledge it, and we have to face it. We can't attempt to retell it as anything other than it was, or else we're not learning our lesson. Right? We're bound to let history repeat itself if we don't learn. So keep it in the entertainment, but present it seriously. Don't change it. Don't take it out. It's a thing that happened. Leave it in. But Disney has been kind of awful about doing this kind of thing, about taking stories and then changing them because of sensitivity and whatnot, and you're erasing certain historical things and certain stories that should be told, that people should learn lessons from. And there's some movies that have never been remade, like Gone with the Wind, and it's probably because it's uncomfortable. I dread to even mention it because it might put that idea out into the universe, but the original Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6, which is New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, they've never been remade. They've been tinkered with. There's all kinds of different additions with different CGI things added in and whatnot. But they haven't been remade as new movies. And now that I say that, I hope the universe doesn't take that ball and run with it, and Disney doesn't decide, well, what are we going to do to salvage our Star Wars franchise? Well, let's just redo the whole thing. Hey, I hope they don't. I hope they don't. Because some things are what they are. You leave them alone. You don't mess with them. But it's... Excuse me, pardon me. It's just a thing that's been going on lately, where they've been taking old things, excuse me, and remaking them into lesser valued things. They're taking old bits of entertainment and they're changing them in ways that they think is helpful, but they're not. Like, how many times can you remake the Fantastic Four? They've had a brand new continuity 4 times. No, 4 times. 4 times. Because there was an old Fantastic Four movie way back in the day. I never saw that one, but I know it exists. And then they had the one with Jessica Alba and Chiklis, whatever his first name is, Chiklis. And Chris Evans. And then they did the next one for that I didn't see, where again they made changes. They changed they made either Sue Storm or Johnny Storm, one of the two of them was adopted because they had different skin color. And I guess it's not a huge deal. It's just a weird thing to just throw in just because you can. And then there's the most recent one that I haven't seen because it kind of looks goofy and I don't think it's going to work. So there's been 4 versions of the Fantastic Four. And people will say, well, yeah, there's been a lot of different... How many times have they redone Batman? But they've done Batman... The approach that they took to the different kinds of Batman have been interesting. They've told the stories in different ways rather than retelling the same story. And... Not that I enjoyed every single Batman film, but I think... You can kind of, in some ways, you can suspend your disbelief a little bit. And you're like, all right, it's a different continuity, it's a different movie, whatever. The different Spider-Man groupings, you had the first 3 with Tobey Maguire, you had the next one, and you had, like, I don't know if the second, the Andrew Garfield one ended up being a trilogy or not. And then you have the most recent one, which was, I think, a trilogy now. Is it a trilogy? Is it working on a 4th movie? I don't know. Marvel stuff has kind of gotten out of control. And they've changed things too. They've changed how characters are presented. They've changed basic storylines. And I get it that the comics and the movies are separate, and sometimes you can't tell exactly what's in the comic, etc. But there's only so much that you can change before it doesn't resemble anything of the source material. It becomes something that's a parody, a resemblance, a passing similarity, but not particularly accurate. Right? So, I don't know. There are some things that don't need to be redone. And I say that knowing that there's things like there's a new Spaceballs coming out, and it's supposed to be a sequel rather than a remake. But I don't know if it's going to be any good. I mean, Mel Brooks is in his 90s. Right? Does he still have it by this point? I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's imagine if we did that with other things. Imagine AC/DC. Okay? And if you're not a fan, you don't have to be a fan for this example. I'm just naming a band that's consistent with their material. AC/DC has sounded almost exactly the same for most of the entirety of its existence. I know they had one singer pass away, so they replaced him with another, and then they're a little different. But it's the same tone, it's the same basic, the same basic feeling you get from AC/DC. But let's say somebody decided, hey, you know what, we want to keep making AC/DC music, but we don't want to keep using the same people. And that's not just like saying, oh, well, this guy's too old or this guy passed away, let's add a new member of the band, because that does happen. But let's say they said, we want to make a new AC/DC, whole new band, playing the same things. And so they grabbed however many guys would match the same like the same number of people playing guitar, playing bass, doing vocals, whatever. But it's all different people, and they sound similar, but they're not the same. But they're gonna play the same songs, and then have more songs that sound like those songs. Do you think you'd get into that? Do you think it would be accurate? Do you think it would fit? Or would it be weird? Right? Would it be kind of underwhelming? Would it be, well, it's kind of like AC/DC, but it's not. Right? Would you just kind of resign yourself to it? Would you just kind of be like, oh, well, I mean, that's AC/DC wasn't going to last forever, so I guess this is the best we're going to get. Same thing with or when a band replaces the singer, either because the singer moved on or they passed away or whatnot, and they're still trying to write the same exact material. Now, sometimes that works out okay. And some people are going to look at me and say blasphemy for some of the examples I'm going to use next, but hear me out. Alice in Chains, Lane Staley, he overdosed, he passed away. And he had a very distinctive voice. And the new guy that replaced him, he's not a new guy anymore, he's been with them for a long time. He doesn't exactly sound like Lane Staley. He never has. And they've kept writing music since then, and most of it sounds more like Jerry Cantrell material from his solo stuff than it does Alice in Chains. But I've liked what they've put out. I'm not going to confuse them with the same what they used to sound like, but I do like what they've become, and they've attempted to just kind of move forward in the way that they can. And some people think it's kind of like, it's boring, it's whatever. And I get it, because some people can't be replaced, but I think they did a good enough job. Now, do you think they should have changed their name? Should they have just gone back to being Jerry Cantrell's solo project, but with a new singer, instead of just Jerry doing all the stuff? It's interesting to think about. And Queen brought in, who was it? Did they bring in Todd Rundgren? No, I don't know. They've been running around with Adam Lambert often for a while. And Adam Lambert's no Freddie Mercury, I'll say that, but other members of Queen are still in it provisionally. I know Brian May. Is it still Queen? Does it still count? And I don't know if they put out any new music with their other singers. I don't know if they attempted to make any new music without Freddie. But it's what if somebody looked at Queen and said, okay, well, since all of these guys are old guys, let's get rid of all the old guys, replace them all with young people that sound like they could pass, and have them write new stuff, and then call it Queen. Would you be into it? I don't think so, is what I'm saying. Yes, are they all talented, but it's still not the same. It's not Queen. And think about it. Maybe you disagree with me. If you have other thoughts about it, by all means, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I'd love to know what you think. Because these are just random, philosophical things that pop through my brain that kind of make me... And I'm probably I'm probably heavy into the grumpy old man energy right now. Most likely. I don't mind when things change. I'll say that. I don't mind when things change, because things do have to change. I will miss when things don't stay the same, but sometimes if they change, they can change for the better. But a lot of times lately, it's not really an attempt to change. It's an attempt to replace, and the replacement is not good. The replacement is substandard and a poor imitation, and it doesn't resemble the original enough to pass. It's like certain radio shows. Certain radio shows out there in the wild that used to be really good. Certain radio shows that I was probably a part of back in the day. They used to be pretty good. Until they weren't. And now they're doing things that are basically nearly identical, with new tricks and new gadgets and new AI and all this other kind of stuff, and they're just not good. It's not the same. It's never going to be the same. And I know some people say, well, that's not the point. It's changing for the better. But what if it's not changing for the better? What if it is a pale imitation because it's still trying to do the same things that it did before, but poorly? You know what I mean? Is it worth supporting like that in the hopes that it's going to get better? Or is it just, you might as well give up while you can. Don't quit your day job. Right? There's a lot of that going on right now in various media. Movies are the biggest one that we see. There's certain sounds of music being repackaged and represented, but they're old stuff that's the same, with new faces, but the same concept. The comics have gotten like that. Most forms of visual art that aren't just like fine art in a museum, even that sometimes, but most forms of visual entertainment are going that way. Games are getting to be like that too. Some games didn't need to be remade, and yet they're being remade. Now, here's an example that kind of I'm gonna what's the word I'm trying to use? I'm gonna go against my own point here with this, and I realize it when I say it, but Dead Space. I'm sure I've talked about in the past how Dead Space is my favorite game franchise of all time, because Dead Space 2 is my favorite game of all time. It's fantastic. There's no comparison. The first Dead Space was pretty good. It had its problems, but it was a great game. I've played it multiple times. They remade it in an attempt to revitalize the franchise, because the studio that had originally made Dead Space was dismantled, and the people were moved on to different things, and so it wasn't the same anymore. But they remade the first Dead Space game from the ground up with a new company. And I really liked it, because in many ways they did improve on the original game. They added new mechanics, they added easier ways to do things. They changed certain sections of levels to make them more involved, and also to take out spots that were just, what were they thinking when the original game came out, right? But they also, there were things that just weren't, there were design choices that weren't as good. Like the voice actors were nowhere near as good as they had been in the original. Some of the motivations for the story were not as good as the original. While it was as faithful as I would have hoped to being like the original, I felt a little bit kind of, and I still feel kind of like, for things that weren't as good. But it was a valiant effort, and I do appreciate the effort. But I'm kind of going against my own argument, because I am enjoying something that got remade that didn't need to get remade, but I'm still enjoying it anyway. So maybe, is that really the point? Is the point not, should we not remake things because some things are great as they are? Or is the point, people are going to be entertained regardless? And the whole point of entertainment is to entertain people. And if you enjoy it, doesn't matter that it's a remake. Doesn't matter that it's a comeback. It matters. It matters more if it sucks, I think. And that's subjective, though. That's not an objective opinion. If I think something sucks, somebody else next to me is going to be like, you know what, I thought it was really awesome. You don't know what you're talking about. So that's not really a valid way to look at it, and I realize that. Which makes most of what I just said just a bunch of complaints with no particular end. No particular end game or end argument. And I get that, and that's fine. I've said my piece on it anyway. And that's how I'm going to feel about it. I've gotten out of a lot of the modern remake stuff. Like, I'm not going out of my way to see it. I'm not going to go watch the new Running Man. I didn't watch the new Total Recall. Even though that came out several years ago, I didn't watch it. I didn't see the new RoboCop because I wasn't interested. I was like, it's not the same. I saw one of the new Mad Max movies, and I don't think this one was specifically a remake. I think this was just another story told in the universe. And I thought it was okay. I haven't seen the most recent one. I've just seen when they kind of rebooted. It was the Fury Road one, I believe, I think. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. I've seen one of the modern ones. They're talking about there was something I saw recently. They were going to remake a franchise, and I don't remember what it was, but I was kind of like, why? There's no reason. It's good as it is. Leave it alone. The new Predator movie, Predator Badlands, is another example of them changing a formula for something in a way that, while I know they're trying to kind of tell new stories, the approach and the execution is problematic. And I've had some discussions with people online about this, just random people. Nobody that I know, it's just randos. And the new Predator, in all the previous Predator films, for the most part, it's clearly an alien being, right? I mean, yeah, we understand it's a guy in a suit as an actor, right? We know that. We suspend our disbelief. We get it. But, but the thing about it is, it's not like when you suspend your disbelief, you can understand, okay, the way the actor is moving, the way the expressions are, you can tell they're being expressive, they're being emotional, but they're an alien being. They have different motivations than we do. It's clearly not meant to be a human, regardless of if it's a guy in a suit just acting the part, right? But in the most recent one, Predator Badlands, and all the trailers I've seen, it is really, 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 really obvious that it's a person in a suit. Because all the expressions look too human. All the facial features look too human. it's humanized this alien creature to the point where they don't look like an otherworldly creature. They look like a guy in a suit, and it's very difficult to suspend disbelief. And if I can't do that, I find it difficult to be entertained. Like with pro wrestling, you obviously, everybody knows pro wrestling, they're characters. They're not actually going out and beating each other up. Yeah, they're doing moves and doing physical things that I can't do, so give them credit for doing the physical things, obviously. But it's all, they've figured out mostly to do that ahead of time. They've all they've agreed on what the patterns are going to be, and maybe not exactly what they're going to say to each other, but a general sense of, okay, well, let's have a talk about this when we go out there. I'm going to talk like this, you're going to talk like this. Right, let's do that. You have to suspend your disbelief in that to believe any of those stories and to be entertained by it. And some promotions are better than others at helping you suspend that disbelief. Some of them make more of an effort to make it seem more realistic than others, while giving you the tongue-in-cheek, like, this is what we're doing. And others aren't so good at it. And so, the same thing with movies. If I'm going to watch something that's meant to be a fictional bit of entertainment, I have to be able to suspend my disbelief. That might be just me. Maybe other people can be entertained and more simply than I do. Maybe I think too deeply about it. But if I can't suspend my disbelief, I can't be entertained in the way that I would like. And that's what's lacking with a lot of the modern remakes and a lot of the most recent reinterpretations. It's failing to deliver an experience that allows me to suspend disbelief. And I've said that phrase a lot in the last 5 minutes. But it's accurate. You consume this entertainment because it's a fantasy. It's even like real gritty crime thrillers and things. You go into it knowing, okay, this is not something that's going on. This is a story that's being told. And when I leave the theater or when I turn off the TV, I know it's not something that actually happened. Even if it's based off of a true story, unless it's a 100% historical drama, even those things have to... No one was there at the time to cover every bit of things that were said between thousands of people in a Union army before going out to fight a Confederate army. You have to fudge it a little bit. You have to come up with stories for the people. You have to, you base it off historical fact from what you know, if you're making a historical piece. But you do add creative liberty. So it's a fantasy. And so when you leave the theater, when you turn off the TV, when you shut the game off, you have to be able to be like, okay, that was a fun story, and divorce yourself from it and go back to living life. Even if it's something that's really haunting, something that's like, because some people, with horror movies, they got to keep the lights on afterwards, they hide under the covers, and it bothers them for a few weeks. This Stephen King movie scared me so badly I get nightmares, but rationally, it's still just a story. It's still a fantasy. And in order for anything to be a fantasy and to still be entertaining, we have to be able to suspend disbelief properly. And I find that difficult to do with many forms of modern entertainment. The last great bastion of this, in visual entertainment, is in video games right now. And even then, there's so much of them that are just terrible nowadays. But there's a lot of them that still are able to tell good stories. And I play a lot of games, and I still enjoy the stories they get told. But even that realm is starting to slip. Because even game franchises that I've always felt really good about have started to get kind of, they're trying to tell me, they're trying to connect too much with me as a real person rather than with me as a person consuming entertainment. And that's not what I'm in for. So, so that's it. That's what I've got. I don't know if any of that made any bit of sense to anybody other than me. It's stuff that I think about often. I think about the entertainment that we consume and whether it's really worth watching, whether it's really stimulating, or whether it's just making us dumber because it's just asking us to accept things that are clearly just unfit for human thought. I guess. I don't know. So I think about that a lot, and I pass on a lot of... I don't watch a lot of movies. Like I said during the movie episode a few episodes ago, the last movie I watched in theaters was Alien Romulus, which did a pretty good job of suspending disbelief. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say that, but regardless. And I don't know, there's just... It's tough for me. Especially when I look at all the stuff going on in the world, and I'm kind of like, this makes me grumpy, because there's so many just crappy things happening in the world itself. I don't want my entertainment to resemble what's the real world. I want to be able to turn that off and just be like, hey, this place is kind of sucking right now. Let me just get into this game, or get into this movie, or get into this whatever for a little while, and just forget about all that, and I'll come back to it later. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But that is it. We are going to get out of here. Don't forget to subscribe to the various content if you enjoy any of this. Follow the show, Uncanny Media, the show, on Spreaker, on Spotify, on Amazon, on iTunes, Apple, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Also on YouTube, Spider Does Things. On Twitch, DMGRGN, if you're interested in watching me play games. And YouTube specifically, if you also, in addition to watching me play games, you want to watch me do drink reviews, robot reviews, whatever else I can come up with. And don't forget about our great affiliates that we have. Musicians Hangout from the PNW, Pacific Northwest, just had their Halloween episode just a couple days ago on Monday, this past Monday. So it's still up on YouTube for your consumption. That is Musicians Hangout on YouTube. They are the #1 absolute best indie music interview show in the Pacific Northwest. And there's not a single person who can bluff their way into telling you otherwise, because there's nobody better. Musicians Hangout. Everyone else is a pale imitation. And, of course, Lou Jack Promotions, putting on shows and events out there in the Pacific Northwest. I know Kevin, who runs that, had a birthday in the early bit of October. Early to mid-October. It was the 17th. Looked like a great show. If I was anywhere near that area, I would have gone. Had a good time. So if you went, I hope you had a good time. And keep an eye. He's got a lot more things planned, I'm sure, before the end of the year. Of course, Big Buff Records here in Canton, Ohio. We're still looking for artists to join our roster. If you want a distribution deal, or if you want to get on some local shows around here, we can put you in touch with the right people. And we can set some things up. I'd love to partner up with you. Let me know. Excuse me. And Cooking Basically, she is a great person. She's done some great recipes. She doesn't have a lot of videos on her YouTube just yet, but we are working on subscribers and views there, so please subscribe to Cooking Basically on YouTube. And if you're into TikTok and all the other places, you can talk to her there. I don't do TikTok, so I don't do a lot of promotion for TikTok, but I guess she is doing very well on TikTok. And of course, she has a blog. If you go to cookingbasically.com, there is a blog, and there is all the great stuff about that, all the great recipes. And that's it. That's all I've got for you. It was a weird episode. Like I said, I'm in a weird mood. Weird things have happened. Weird. Suspend disbelief. Haven't gotten that out of my system yet. Suspend disbelief. That's it. We're done. I'm going to go eat some food. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.